Let's get into it. Let's go. It's episode 551 of the Soul Not For Sale podcast, and we are ending our video series, our coverage of the Trump and Tucker conversation. We're ending it with Trump's final remarks, and then also there's another clip that I'm going to play where he's touching on some things that, believe it or not, are things that Jordan Peterson has touched on in regards to the World Economic Forum. And I just wish that, I know it sounds weird, that Trump could have a little more Jordan Peterson in him when he's explaining things. So let's get into that. And then Tucker asks Trump something at the very end that I don't think any of us want, but I think a lot of us are feeling it's getting to that point. And it's only because there's so much division between the two parties. And honestly, I think it is the absolute worst thing that can happen to a country. And that question is the topic of civil war. I think it's a disgrace when it happens. It's the worst thing when a country has to fight itself. Because the number one thing you can be assured of is that people are going to perish. That's war. That's the one thing that is promised in war. So let's get into that. Before I do, of course, I have to bring you to the store. This is the Soul Not For Sale t-shirt. And for some of you, you're getting to the point where you got to look up the hoodies. You're getting to that point. I'm sorry to bring it up. I know you don't want to hear about it. Those people on the East Coast, you're coming to that time. We also have the Public Enemy #1 shirt. Google Agenda 2030, Google the World Economic Forum, and understand why this gentleman here has been labeled Public Enemy #1. We also have the Certified Pure Blood shirt for those of you that survived the pandemic unscathed. But I will say, your strength will be tested again. Please stay strong through this time in the next 6 months that is coming to us. And also the Try That in a Small Town shirt for those of you that have those small town values and understand that when you want people to not loot and burn down cities, it's not racist. It's common sense. Now, all of that's available on IamCoachColin.com. And if you want 10% off, no problem. Got you right now. I am Coach Colin. You put that in all capital letters, all one word, one L in the name Colin, that gets you 10% off. And if you've done that with us already, thank you so much. You have no idea how much it means to us. Now let's get into this clip.
And now we have a president that can't put two sentences together, can't speak, can't walk, can't talk. I don't think he gets to the starting gate, but these people do miracles. I mean, he ran out of his basement, and you got away with that one because of COVID, so he sort of got away with it. They cheated on the election. But you have people that are very smart, but they're fascists and they're radical left lunatics, and they're destroying our country with the all-electric cars and the windmills all over the place, which, by the way, don't work, and they're all, most of them, made in China. For the most part, they're made in China. Germany a little bit, but China. But you look at what's happening to our country, even no voter ID. I mean, why don't they want voter ID? There's only one reason they don't want voter ID, because they want to cheat. I mean, who doesn't want, the Democrat convention, the last one, they had voter ID that was this big. It looked like a prison card, this big on their chest. You walked in, they had your picture, your this, your fingerprint. They had everything. The most incredible voter ID I've ever seen. That was to get into the Democrat National Convention. But to get in to vote, if you buy groceries, if you buy practically anything now, you have ID on a card. Credit cards or otherwise.
But don't you think it's racist to have to show your ID?
Well, they probably say that. They use anything not to show ID because voter ID is pretty simple. And we could go back, and we should go back to all paper ballots, voter ID, same-day voting. France did it. France had mail-in ballots, and it was terrible. Anytime you have mail-in ballots, you're going to have massive cheating on your elections. Anytime, but not just the presidential election. Anytime you have...
Isn't that the whole point of them?
Yeah.
You can
cheat?
Oh,
yeah, sure. It's their whole point. That's their whole point. They want to cheat. Yeah. They have to cheat because their policies are so bad that if they didn't cheat, they couldn't get elected. Who wants open borders? Who wants high taxes? Who wants high interest rates? Who wants to not be able to use a gas stove or have to drive an electric car, which, you have a 4-hour drive, but the car only goes an hour and a half, so you have to charge it. The happiest moment for somebody in an electric car is the first 10 minutes. In other words, you get it charged, And now for 10 minutes. The unhappiest part is the next hour because you're petrified that you're not going to be found another charger. People, I'm saying if people, I'm not knocking electric cars, they're fine. They're fine. But if people want to buy a gasoline car or a hybrid, hybrids are pretty good actually, but they should be allowed to buy, they don't want to do any of this. So right now, California's in a big brownout because their grid is a disaster. The grid all over the country is sort of a disaster, but the grid in California. And yet they want to have in a very short period of time millions and millions of cars going off that grid essentially. It doesn't work.
So plug your car into a grid that's failing.
You should be able to buy an electric car. You know, electric cars could be fine if you drive short distances and you want to have, you know, whatever, and you have plug-ins everywhere you go. They could be fine. But you got to have gasoline cars. You got to have everything. Let people buy everything. Now there's the new thing is your heating systems in the house. They don't want you to have a modern day heating system. They want you to use a heating system that will cost you at least $10,000 to buy and won't work very well.
Now, when I say that Jordan Peterson has touched on these points, Jordan Peterson has touched on the fact that all over the world, as they hike up energy prices, as they try to push people towards electric cars and the windmill energy and all that stuff, how that is actually killing in some context. Jordan Peterson explains it very well, that if you're an older person and you have to reduce your energy, reduce your heating, like that could have horrible health impacts on you as an older person. And what they're doing right now, he breaks it down so well. He talks about how this is going to affect hundreds of millions of people. And when he actually talks about the elite and what their plan is, like as you do all these things and it damages the lower and middle class, what do you think's going to happen to these people? You know, some of them are not going to be able to afford it. People aren't going to be able to heat their house. You put bans on gas-powered cars. You have to buy an electric car. You can't afford an electric car. You can't afford the upgrade where you have to convert your garage or whatever to have an actual plug-in. There's just so many things that are wrong with this. And Trump, the way he brings it all up, it's kind of in a rant. I'm going to show you this next clip in a second. He brings it up in this ranting type of form, but he's right about everything he's saying. He's being funny about it. He's being kind of, I want to say like aloof about it. He's not really grabbing onto the subject and really saying what's going to happen, but he's right about all of it. He clearly knows that all of these things are going to have such a negative impact, and it's already showing, you know, in certain places. He clearly knows all that, but he doesn't, I don't want to say he doesn't articulate it well, but he doesn't articulate it enough. And then also as he's touching on all this, when he's touching on the cheating and what they're going to do in terms of mail-in ballots, he even touches on France. I mean, when you look at the president of France and then you figure out they had mail-in ballots, it's like, I don't know, makes sense. It's like the worst president they've ever had, and they had mail-in ballots to get him into the office. I don't know, but that doesn't look good, right? So he understands what's going on. He understands that there's an attack within right now that's happening. He understands it, but he doesn't fully say it. And he should. I think he should be articulating that. You know, because when you start articulating that there's an attack going on within, and then you use all these little talking points, and if he articulated it better, people would start to understand, like, yeah, there is kind of, why are they doing this to us? You know, he touches on gas stoves, and the way he says it, it sounds like, what are you talking about? But New York is doing that. They are doing that. They've made jokes about it, the mainstream media, like, oh, no one's coming after your gas stoves, but they actually are. You know, no one's coming after your gas cars, but they actually are. Like, why do they keep doing all this stuff? Why is this like grip for control? More and more control. Hooking things up to electricity so they can be controlled more and more. More and more stuff connected to the grid. Listen, we're talking about President Trump. I don't want to get too much into it. But for years, a few years, people have been talking about how one day they're going to attack the grid. And if they do, and they shut everything off, what will happen? Well, if you have a gas stove, you'll be all right. If you have a gas car, you'll be all right. If you have all this electric stuff that they're trying to push onto you, you will not be all right. That's if that happens. That's just something that I've heard. Maybe you've heard about it too. Computers would be down. Everything that would work electronically would be down. It would be terrible if all of a sudden you didn't have gas stoves and you didn't have gas cars. You would be at the complete mercy of the state. You would have to listen to anything and everything they said. You would have to do exactly what they told you to do. If they needed you to do something, to be in the runnings, to be taken care of, so many people would have to do it. And you know what I mean by that. You know the thing that they want most of us to do. And it's coming up again. So he articulates himself not as well as I wish he did. You know? But let's get into the second clip here, where he kind of gives his closing remarks on this whole thing. And then we'll go into what we've learned so far from this conversation between Tucker and Trump. Let's go.
Do you think we're moving towards civil war?
There's tremendous passion and there's tremendous love. January 6th was a very interesting day because they don't report it properly. I believe it was the largest crowd I've ever spoken before. And you know some of the crowds I've spoken before. And like July 4th on the mall, I think they had 1 million people there. But I think that the biggest crowd I've ever spoken before was on January 6th. And people that were in that crowd, a very, very small group of people, and we said patriotically and peacefully and patriotically, right? Nobody ever says that. Go peacefully and patriotically. But people that were in that crowd that day, very small group of people went down there, and then there are a lot of scenarios that we can talk about. But people in that crowd said it was the most beautiful day they've ever experienced. There was love in that crowd. There was love and unity. I have never seen such spirit and such passion and such love. And I've also never seen simultaneously and from the same people such hatred of what they've done to our country.
So do you think it's possible that there's open conflict? We seem to be moving towards something.
I don't know, because I don't know what it, I can say this. There's a level of passion that I've never seen. There's a level of hatred that I've never seen, and that's probably a bad combination.
Donald Trump, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very much.
Thank you.
That is a bad combination, by the way.
Bad combination.
So that's where it ends. And this again talking about civil war and moving towards that. That would be a terrible, terrible thing. Again, I've brought it up at least 5 times. The whole scenario of thinking back to Jerry Springer, and there's some guy and he's cheating on one girl and he's cheating on another girl, and then the 2 girls fight and they leave the guy alone. That's what in my mind civil war is. All of a sudden the people are fighting each other because the people have to get recruited into that whole thing for it to really be a civil war, right? The people begin fighting each other and they leave the actual main culprit who is making all this happen. They leave them, unscathed. And that's just not the way it should be. Not that I'm saying there should be violence towards that entity. It's just that there shouldn't be a civil war. It would be terrible. It would be absolutely terrible. But so what have we learned from this whole talk? Well, you know what? I'll be honest. It's been really funny. It's funny to listen to. It's funny to hear Trump talk about Biden and talk about Kamala Harris, how she speaks in rhymes, and Joe's always collapsing. It's fun to hear all that. But I wish there was more talk about his vision for America. I think someone like Trump speaking about his vision, like when you hear Vivek speak, he speaks about a vision, something that he's going towards. He keeps bringing that up. He's like, we're not running from something. We got to be running towards something. I think it would be so powerful if Trump decided to start speaking about the vision that he had for America, what he really wanted to see America become. I think that would be very, very powerful. Very, very powerful. And if he started speaking about that and he started uniting people, because he did say in this conversation, he is representing, Democrats and Republicans. He's like, I'm everybody. He's like, I'm everybody's president. He's, how it should be. I wish he would just talk about that more. I wish he would talk about what he would actually do more, in terms of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, the issues with China, the issues with BRICS right now. I mean, all these nations are getting together and kind of trying to move away from the dollar. I wish he would talk about what he would do to stop that from happening more. I wish he would talk about what he would do. He brings up the gas stoves, he brings up the electric cars, he brings up what they're doing. I wish he would talk more about what his plans would be to make that stop and to bring America into a better place. That's my main takeaway. I mean, again, it's great to see him talk about, Biden and the current administration, because there's such a pain point there with so many people that they want to hear somebody talk down on this administration, because the administration is looking down on so many people and, in certain ways kicking them down as well. And it's terrible. But I wish he would just talk more about vision and more about actual steps. And I think that's why so many people are identifying with Vivek, because he keeps talking about his vision for America. He keeps talking about where he wants to see America go. And again, that's why they would be so good together. That's why they would be so perfect together. Because Trump would have these ideas and Vivek would have this vision, and together they could just move towards it, and it would be perfect. It would be perfect. But Vivek says he won't do that. We'll see. You know what I think? I think if President Trump if Trump wins and he comes to him and says, listen, America, I am the president, and I'm telling you right now, America needs you as vice president. You are needed right now, and I want you to step in this position. I think Vivek would do it. I think if he had the scenario of America needs you, like, you're not taking a number 2 role, you're taking your role as an American citizen, as somebody who wants to see change, you are stepping into this role, I think he would step in right away. But we'll see. We'll see. All right. I got to get out of here. More on the GOP debates today. I'm going to go through it and see. Pretty much, I have watched a lot of it. Again, Vivek, exactly what I said. Vivek is dominating, obviously. They're trying to compare him to Obama like Bill Maher. It's just nonsense, in my opinion. But anyways, guys, like the video if you haven't liked it already. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. And other than that, I am out.